I was sick like all last week, so I was um kind of
Oh,
laying
bug.
around a lot of the time. I don't even know what I had. I don't know if it was sinus infection. That's what I thought it was becoming, but it never settled into that. My wife thinks I had tonsillitis, whatever. I don't know. My tonsils were swollen, and it was like kind of had that hard to swallow feeling. I don't know if you remember that as a kid. You used to get strep all the time, but particularly I remembered with strep was like your throat just hurt, and it just every time you had to like swallow something, every time you had to eat, it just it was a
It was,
pain
it was
every
swollen.
time. Yeah. And so I had that, and then also a lot of like fatigue and some body aching, and I don't know what it was. But that being said, I was sitting around like watching on YouTube a lot of just YouTube shorts or I would shorthand TikToks, and I came across. You ever heard of Outdoor Boys?
No, I don't think I have.
It's like I think he's a retired lawyer, but all the way up in Alaska, and he's got a family. They live kind of off grid, but he just records himself doing like these extreme camping and hikings, and it's kind of odd. And I was telling Lindsay how odd it is, how quickly I go primal, and I'm sure you have the same thing. But he's just like out there surviving and going through this like negative 30-degree weather, and I'm like, that seems
That
fulfilling.
seems, yeah, that seems very testosterone filled.
Yeah, and then he's like on a beach, like drying out the gravel and the rocks, and he's like, if you dry this out over the course of like 8 hours, build a huge fire on top of it, move the fire around. He's like, you'll be warm the whole night. It's like, yeah, that just seems like peak of life, even though I'm sitting here controlling AC and everything.
Do I
Oh,
want
that
to
guy.
sit in cool 70 degree or warm 68, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, he's like shivering the whole time until it gets to. I'm only seeing a highlighted minute of his miserable 38 hours probably. But yeah, I told Lindsay it's just funny how anything primal seems fun to me, whereas I just went out and got like coffee this morning and like sat down in nice air conditioning and was comfortable. Didn't even think about like sweating. I was like, I
It
want that.
wasn't it wasn't hard at all to go get that coffee.
No, no. But I did start a fire in there, so that was nice. But let's get into it.
Let's go. Episode 3, Reefer Dale.
Get away. All right. So my notes are a bit different this week. I'm looking at a screen instead of a paper. So if I am looking off to my right, maybe your left, more than often, forgive me. And also, I probably sound a bit different. As I noted earlier, I was sick a lot last week, so I'm going to try and sound normal, but I'll do what I can. So with Rockingham, return to the Rock. How was it?
hmm
What's the track like? How are the facilities?
I was actually really surprised. I don't really have many negative comments about Rockingham itself. I think they did a good job of overhauling the old track, but keeping it the vintage look. And honestly, I didn't know this, but the tower above the start finish line is like it was not original, but it was built before the last time like the Cup Series left. So it looks very modern and updated. I thought it was, something they added on in the remodel, but no, it wasn't. So overall, I give Rockingham an A plus, dude. That was a fun race. It was fun for me both races. We were competitive on pit road. We were competitive on the track, especially in the truck race. We were competitive. We were even overall had good pace, good speed with Jeremy in the Xfinity race. We had great pit stops.
Yeah.
So I really don't have any complaints. I think the only thing that they got to maybe work on is widening the tunnel in and out. There's only one tunnel,
Hmm.
and it's only one lane, so you can only have people going out or coming in. One flow rate. But other than that, dude, like if that's my only complaint, I think they did a great job. And I think the racing was really cool. My only thing is I want to be able to go back and maybe watch the races themselves where I see the whole track instead of seeing the truck series race. We were pit stall 9, so we were in the corner down in turn 1, and then for the Xfinity race, we were right at the start finish line. So I only get to see that portion of the track. And so some of the racing on the back stretch or anything that happened outside of the front stretch or in turn 1 for the truck race, I couldn't really see, but I saw the mayhem at the end of the Xfinity race when I
Hmm.
think the 16 ran out of gas and stuff.
Yeah. Well,
So all that happened right in
several.
front of us. But no, I think that they did a great job. I think hopefully one day Cup Series gets to go. I don't know how you would do that. I think you'd end up selling. It would sell out for sure. So I don't know if you need to put in more stands, more bleachers, how you do it, but
I
I think it'd be
mean,
really cool.
I think to me, that is a question I had was wanting to see a cup race there. So we'll just go ahead and talk about that. Was to me, I want to see one there. I do kind of like the way Ben Kennedy is approaching it because I think he put out a statement saying we'll see how this year and next year go. I think he just said a couple years. And I do agree with that. Just don't, because it is a rural area. It's not a market that needs to be like, again, I live in
It's
Southern
been
California.
explored
Our track is torn to pieces. If it was out here, I'd be like, yeah, put a cup race in next year. But um, yeah, it being that it kind of reminds me a bit of Martinsville in the way the town it's in is not a huge town and it's an old
now.
track and it's a historical track for NASCAR, but it did lose its date. I mean, for what, 20 plus years now. Uh, so I would like to see this next gen car. They kind of pointed out as it being like a new, not very worn in track that I think if the next gen was there, it would become a one groove track and it would almost have echoes of Wilkesboro from the first year, even though Larson, I think, if I remember right, Kyle Larson, um,
Oh, dude, he had like a what, a
yeah, he
12 or
figured
13
it out and
second
just
lead.
yeah, he did something. So yeah, I after watching this weekend, I was glad to see the Xfinity car get on there because that one really put on a good show. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of I thought I would come out of here excited to see the cups get on there or cup cars get on there, but I was like, oh, let's hold off, let it age a bit. Let's keep the trucks and Xfinity there. Like you said, the I would kind of rather see maybe Wilkesboro if we were to keep that and Rockingham. Wilkesboro go into points, whereas Rockingham becomes an all-star race or something.
For sure. I think you could use it as a test track for some ideas. And I
Yeah.
think you could test some stuff on the Gen 6 car or the next gen car. I guess you should say it's not the
Yeah.
Gen 6 car. That maybe some stuff that it doesn't need to be deployed into an actual race, but something that it has no value other than just, money on the line.
Yeah.
But I'll go back to what you said. Rockingham, the biggest negative for Rockingham, and it's not really the facility or the track. I think it's the market. There's really nothing around Rockingham. It's an hour and 45-minute drive from my house,
I was gonna ask how
and
far it was.
I'll be honest. I didn't even pass. I think I passed like one or two McDonald's. It was a lot of
Did you
backwoods
pass the Dollar
roads.
General? Those
Of
are always in the
course,
small towns. Yeah. You passed
yeah.
19 of them.
I passed several Dollar Generals, but I didn't pass a Walmart. I passed two McDonald's and a couple gas stations.
My
It's the
wife
route
and
it
I
took
joke that
me.
Dollar General is the Starbucks of LA because I live in LA and there is literally, I mean, it's crazy. There is a Starbucks every 3 blocks, maybe.
I believe it.
You can average it out. So that's the way a Dollar General is in a rural county.
Yeah. I think the only other thing too I would look to tell if I was heading up anything with NASCAR is maybe trying to work on widening pit road. It felt narrow. And that being said, my tire carrier Alvin, he got clipped by the 42 this weekend. They were pitting in front of us. We came down like one or two cars ahead of the 42. So when we jumped out in front of the 51, the 42 came into their stall, clipped the tire. Now like I said, I don't know if that's necessarily because pit road
Is
is
it a
narrow.
more narrow pit road than some? I know. I mean, Martinsville is narrow, and
I would say so. I obviously don't have measurements and
yeah, you didn't
anything
measure it,
to
did you, buddy?
didn't pull out the tape measure
You're
to
not
try to
bringing
find that
facts
out.
here.
But it just looks more narrow, and I think that you'd have to widen that a little bit for the cup cars, just
Mm,
because I mean everybody's moving, they're pushing everything they got in the cup race for being on pit road, on and off, out of the pit stall. It's just name
yeah,
of the game. So maybe widening that a little bit, but I mean otherwise I thought the racing was great and it was an overall great show. Trucks, the show was, if you like fuel mileage races, you'd love it. If you don't,
it was an interesting fuel
mm,
mile race.
yeah, I'm
Um,
still confused on if the 18 pitted like 8 laps before us or if they pitted the same lap we did, but we
yeah.
ran out with 4 or 5 to go. They kept going. So
Well, we'll
that's all
get
I
into
know.
the truck race in just a second because you did bring up another question, or it led to another question, which was how far it is from Charlotte, the Charlotte area, which you said was about an hour and 45. I know Darlington's about 2 hours, same with Martinsville. And there's a lot of those tracks that are within 3 hours from Charlotte, and you drive to those, right?
Yes. Yeah,
And
we
so, but if you go to like Texas, I know you now fly, y'all have the private charters for that. So on those really close tracks, if you're pitting, for example, this weekend you pitted Friday and Saturday, are you going home in between both races? And is that something you do at Martinsville and Darlington?
Yeah, a lot of times we talk with the team beforehand, and sometimes we'll have hotels, prearranged for us, the pit crew guys, to stay in along with road crew guys. And it really depends on time of race. So sometimes we might have a 8 o'clock race, and then we have a 1 o'clock race the next day. So if we're getting out of the 11 or the 8 o'clock race at 11 p.m., 12 p.m., just depending on how the race goes, and then we have a 2 hour drive home, they'll just get us hotel rooms, within probably 30 minutes of the track. We can sleep, and then we got to be back at the track for like a 1 p.m. race. We'll have to be there around 9 or 10. So really doesn't make much sense for us to go home depending on race start times. But that being said, some people do decide to still go back to their house. And it also depends on what you're working. If you're only doing trucks, you're obviously not staying overnight. If you're only doing Xfinity, then you'll just come up Saturday. So that's kind of how that goes. But sometimes you can, you know, do what you'd like to do, but at the same time, the teams do try to offer us hotel rooms if you want them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into the truck race. Our winner was Tyler Ankrum. As you mentioned earlier, it was a big fuel mileage race, which was, I found it to be a more interesting fuel mileage race because you had actually said before we really started recording, we were talking about how the uniqueness of and the size of Rockingham, where it was, I think they said it was 0.94 miles, but you were talking earlier about how y'all didn't really know an exact pit window, which really showed this weekend. Not necessarily y'all running out of gas or anything, but just if you really look at, especially the Xfinity race when we get to that, it's they were
It was
telling their
everywhere.
yeah, it was just everywhere, which made it interesting. It wasn't like everyone was being able to predict it. So Tyler Ankrum gets his second. Is that his second win? I think
Yeah, I
so.
believe so.
And it was both off of fuel mileage races. Yeah, they played it right, but it was I just really did find it interesting, but I was really pulling for y'all. I thought y'all had a strong truck. I think did y'all lose a bit in the last stage kind of? I mean y'all swept the first two stages. Um
Yeah, so first pit stop, we came down pit road, going back to not knowing the surface, the tire compound that we had for the truck race and Xfinity race, like how the longevity of this tire would last. Some teams gambled. So we beat everybody that took four tires off pit road. We came down P1. I think we went up P3. The two cars that beat us was the 45 and the 9. They took two tires.
yeah.
And then second pit stop, we came down P1 again. My rear changer, Steven, he slipped coming around the back of the truck, so we lost a little bit of time. I think we lost four spots of the people who took four tires. We came in first, went out 10th or 11th,
Yeah,
but
I noticed that.
five trucks took two tires. So it's important for us to kind of like keep perspective because sometimes we were like, oh my gosh, we lost 10 spots. We realized there was only like four other trucks that took four tires that actually beat us. So all that being said, we were kind of bummed we lost spots, but we got kind of shuffled back and track position was just really important that if you really didn't have front row, starting row with this restart, or maybe even second row, it got hard to pass after a while unless your truck really came to life as the run went on, which Lane did say his truck was better on the long run. So I think
Yeah,
that kind of
I
showed
saw
too
that.
between the stages because we started fifth and we drove to first by the end of the first stage, and then I think by the end of the second stage, kind of the same story. We
Yeah.
worked and got around the other two trucks that were ahead of us. And honestly, two tires, it upheld a lot longer than I thought it would. I did not think the two tires would last quite as well as it did. The 9 and the 45, the 9 fell off more than the 45. I think the 45 finished like third in that stage, maybe second. So he really only lost like one or two spots. The 9, I think, fell to like seventh or eighth. So he
Mhm.
fell off 4 or 5 spots, something like that. But that
Yeah,
was,
and so when you
that's
pit
what
for
messed up.
like two tires for them particularly, is that just is the goal there? It's maintaining track position, what I would guess as well, but it's is it also do you think you have a chance to hold the lead? Like what's the success rate of getting two tires compared to other people who have been running up front getting four tires?
I think a lot of it comes down to data. It comes down to data, like how the weekend has played out. Like does your truck handle okay with taking two tires? And if you practice and tried just right sides to see the fall off for the left side, if the truck loses pace, but also like what are the teams around you trying? Like say if you tried on stage two on your stage two pit stop, we're gonna go two tires on this stop, guys. Like the guys that pitted at stage one, they didn't really lose much ground. Let's try to keep our position at the front. And if you have to gamble a little bit. There's a little bit of
Yeah,
luck involved.
absolutely.
But nonetheless, usually when you're doing two tires, the advantage is to gain track position. You're not so much looking for longevity, like we're going to be able to maintain.
Hmm.
It might be a short-term gain, long-term loss, but um, I mean, sometimes you also have to have factor in like what if you have a couple of cautions, then you start having heat cycles under your tires and stuff, and
Yeah.
the truck or car might start to handle different when you start doing that. So
Yeah, if it's a late race caution and I see somebody go with two tires, I get it. That seems like a blatant gamble. But when I see it in the earlier stages, to me, maybe it just screams trying to get that track position and
for sure.
trying to survive until that next stage caution or caution,
Hmm.
kind of equal it out in that sense. But yeah, some big hitters. I wouldn't say big hitters, but big names have trouble early on and without even like spinning. I mean, Ben Rhodes, he went out pretty early around stage two. Power steering issues. Matt Crafton, I can't remember what his issue was, but I think in stage two he also went behind the wall for a minute. But Ty Majeski had a wreck around a lap 110, and that was a significant wreck. Um,
I actually never saw that wreck.
Kind of
Side
backed
note
up into it.
for this whole weekend without Cup Series being there, we didn't have our normal broadcasts on our monitors and stuff, so we were having to do kind of old school data collection on some of the NASCAR app, or we had Starlink set up to try to
And
get
some
our
of them
feed and
have what they
stuff.
have in like submarines, where you're like looking the whole time, and it's just mirrors going all the way up.
I can't think of what that's called, like it's some kind of telescope.
Yeah,
But
submarine telescope. I think that's what you would search on Amazon.
submarine telescope.
Yeah,
But yeah, the so we didn't have our normal broadcast there this weekend, so our monitors and stuff for
yeah.
Xfinity weren't turned on. So some of the race and the wrecks and stuff we didn't get to see like normal.
Oh, well, yeah. There was a couple. I mean, Connor Mozak
Oh,
particularly. I
it's called a
think
periscope. It just hit me. It's
I
called a
was gonna say
periscope.
Periscope. I just don't want to sound like an idiot.
Yeah, I think it's periscope.
Yeah. So Connor Mozak, he spun a couple times, particularly one or two times was with Bailey Curry. Um,
I felt bad for Bay next to us, and they were fast at Bristol, and they
yeah,
qualified really good. And then I think after the first lap, they were on pit road, and I was like,
yeah.
"Oh man, like
Well, yeah,
I'm
Connor
sorry,
Mozak
guys."
was, I think, yeah, he was the first to spin, and he had a couple spins, if I remember right. And I'm still looking at the top 10 finish, and he's, what is he? He's ninth, so he bounced back somehow.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I want to look at his results because I want to say that this is one of his best finishes of the year, if not the best. I remember he'll run up front, but then something happens. He's just been kind of hitting some bad luck. Um, but yes, lap 118, Stuart Friesman, Tanner Gray, and Matt Mills all wreck, which is pretty significant. I noticed, and this would kind of come up again around Xfinity, which trying to pass on the inside really got the trucker car loose, which I found entertaining. I mean, Lane seemed to pull it off a couple times, but he also seemed to get really loose, especially early on when it was trying to figure out what this track is doing, what the racing is going to be like. And I think that's how a lot of wrecks happen, particularly I want to say the Stuart Friesman one was kind of a just three wide racing or two wide racing and just get up underneath. Actually, I think he got hit from behind and it just kind of was a domino effect. But yeah, I really noticed that a lot, which was if somebody went to pass on the inside, it created pretty good racing because it wasn't an easy pass. It was you have to time it right, you had to handle it right, because if not, like you could genuinely get loose and run someone up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which was pretty interesting, and that's what I was really enjoying was like this pass is not going to be easy, and then also when somebody got in front of the other, it wasn't what we see with the next gen car, which is the next gen car just can't handle dirty air very well at all. And so, I
Yeah, it's
mean,
like
if
you're
you're
carrying around an anchor.
yeah, if you're in the lead, you have the advantage in that sense, which was not an issue here. Um, but yeah. As for the trucks, I did note that it continues. I don't know what the street count is, but um, I know this was a few miles race, and at one point, I will admit I wanted to see a caution just to see what happens. I also was pulling for y'all to get back in there because I thought if it re-racked, granted, y'all did run out of fuel at one point,
Yeah,
with what, like eight
5
or
to go
so,
or something like
5 to
that.
go, yeah. Uh, Actually, I did note that fuel mileage, 34 pitted with 4 to go, 38 went out as well. And then, yeah, I think the 18 was running out and he pretty much just had to coast on that last lap. That's what they made it seem like on the broadcast, but he still had, like, did a burnout and drove around. Um,
Yeah, from what I saw happening live at the track, it was he basically knew he had like a fairly big lead, like 7 to 10 seconds,
yeah,
and he knew he could half throttle a lot of that to make sure he had enough to, you know, drive
yeah.
it home off of 3 and 4, and he could make it. So,
So in a race like we had in the truck race, y'all run well. Again, like I said, y'all swept both stages. Um, we're very competitive, and then for to run out with 4 or 5 to go, whenever it was, what are the emotions like in those moments?
mm, expectation management, man, that's a tough one. I was actually talking to somebody about that this past weekend at the track. They said you're gonna have more bad days at the track than good days.
Hmm.
And it's one of those things that's maybe never been said out loud to me, but it just kind of hit me that you typically do have more than some days are more of a heartbreak than others because you really feel like, man, we had the car to beat, and I wouldn't say that that's a rare thing. For certain teams, it's definitely something you have more often, which is like cars that you just come to the racetrack and you know that they're going to be fast.
Yeah,
So if you're on one of those teams, it's a situation of pretty much every given week you just got to execute. But for some teams, like some weeks you just don't quite have that the truck or car, and so when you're there, you know, like, hey, if I'm a fifth place truck or car, we want to try to finish around fifth place, fourth place, and get what we can get. But then when you know you probably had the best truck or car and you don't win, it's there's definitely more heartbreak. Because I was definitely frustrated when we left the track Friday night. I was just like, man, if we maybe didn't have any issues on pit road and didn't lose a couple spots, would that have changed our outcome? Possibly. So I think there's a little bit of that, like, left on the table feeling that's like, dang, we were right there, but we also didn't quite perform. So there's also that little bit of a kick while you're down that we let Lane down a little bit, but that truck was so good that he could easily drive it back up to the front. But
yeah.
I just think that some of it was the tires didn't wear like they should have, and um, we also just didn't give Lane, the best pit stops that we could give him to go out there and win the race.
Mhm. All right. Well, let's talk about some notable finishers on the truck, and then we'll move on to Xfinity. But I mean, obviously, in first, Tyler Ingram being his second win. I find him to be a pretty fairly competitive truck, but I also find him to be running into some bad luck every now and then.
Hmm.
And But yeah, pulls it off and actually had a pretty clean truck by the end. Jake Garcia getting second. Again, I don't know too much about some of these truck drivers. Jake Garcia is one that I've seen his name in the top 10, but I don't, I feel like he maybe has some bad luck or something and maybe just doesn't finish them. Uh, Raja Karuth getting fourth was pretty interesting to see. Um,
Right. Yeah, I
yeah,
think from what I know, Jake Garcia, this is his second full-time season, so I think some of it might be just
yeah,
learning pains and growing as a driver. He definitely seemed to know what he was doing at Rockingham. Some weeks I see the 13 towards the front, some weeks are about a 10th place truck. Raja is kind of hit and miss too. I think he's going through the learning curves as well as visiting new tracks. I
yeah.
think a lot of these guys, some guys naturally might just figure it out a little bit quicker than others. Just like Tyler Ankrum, he's only got his second win in like 6 years, I think, is what he's raced. But sometimes teams just don't have the equipment certain seasons. Sometimes they do. I think Tyler's definitely seemed to have been pretty sporty this year. He's had some good runs. I know Vegas he led a lot and could have won. So I think some of this just takes time. Some people just develop slower. Some guys just develop a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see. I think he's got a, I don't want to say for sure, but I feel like he's got a couple of Xfinity starts coming. because it is there is an interesting switch from trucks to Xfinity. Be really good in
Hmm.
trucks, but you may not be great in Xfinity, vice versa. Um, in sixth place was Caden Honeycutt. I feel like he's a sleeper or becoming a sleeper. Like I've seen him up front quite a bit. Maybe not finishing or the finishes don't show that, but yeah, I feel like I've seen him
Yeah.
more and more up front. Um, one that I was surprised to see at how well they just ran in general was Jack Wood. He was always in top 15 the whole time, and he
Mm.
comes home seventh. And then, like I said earlier, and Connor Mosek spinning a couple times, he still comes home ninth. So good on him. Way to bounce back.
Yeah, I think
So,
all those McAnally trucks finished fairly well. I think it was 81, 91, and 18
oh,
and
so
19. I think
yeah,
those
they're
are
a
that's
team.
the four trucks that are all teammates.
I was like, I didn't think of them as teammates, but then looking at the font numbers, yeah, it all makes sense. For some reason, all of last year, the 19 truck, which was Christian
That was a
Eckes,
dominant truck.
it was a dominant truck, but I just thought they were their own team the
Mm.
whole season. Not until like the beginning of this season did I think, oh, yeah, wait, he has
The
teammates. Because
19 and 91, 81,
well, yeah, because like
18.
I never really heard of the team for some reason. Like the trucks is probably the one I know the least about in the way of teams and all that. It's a fairly revolving door in a lot of ways, but yeah, for some reason, all of last year, because I would tell my wife we're watching the race, I was like, yeah, you can tell who's on Team Spire just by the font. Same with kind of the same with Hendrick. It can be a little bit different. The five kind of looks a bit different. But yeah, so I was like, look at the fonts and the style. You can tell, and it just never clicked with me that those four trucks are all on team. I thought there was some low end team, and I was like, good for them.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think McAnally's been in the sport for 3 or 4 years now. They haven't been around very long, but long enough to where they're kind of starting to make some noise. I mean, Hemrick's won a race, Ankram's now won a race. Christian Eckes last year won like five or six.
yeah, no, Christian
So
Eckes was really good in it. Um, yeah, and then y'all finished 11th, so y'all are just outside of the top 10. I mean, not a bad bounce back. I mean, like it definitely could have been worse. Running out of fuel at the end at a lot of other tracks would result in a pretty far back finish.
yeah,
Um, so it definitely could have been worse. On to the Xfinity race, Sammy Smith, after Jesse Love is disqualified, Sammy
yeah.
Smith comes in first. So very interesting. Uh, Something I noticed, I wasn't able to watch the practice qualifying, but something I did notice whenever I did go look at the results was Zilich, Retzloff, Sanchez, and Kane all qualified very well. Zilich, I'm not surprised. He always has qualified well. It's mainly been him finishing the race is the result that changes. But Retzloff in Alpha Prime qualifying really well is not something you
He may
see all the
qualify
time.
like third or fourth.
Yeah, top five at least. I think all these were top five because I think Kane was fourth-ish.
Yeah,
And Sanchez was up there. And I came in on the Xfinity race, just living on the West Coast. If it starts at 12, I mean, I'm usually out around that time. So I came back in, or I came in on the race towards the end of stage one, and I noticed Sanchez was in the lead for a minute. Um, but yeah, so we'll get into this first topic.
oh
Uh,
gosh, I know where this is going.
Catherine Legg, William Swalich, and Casey Kane wreck early. I at first was probably part of that crowd that was frustrated with Catherine Legg, which I mean, you can make the argument she didn't leave enough room, but also when you can kind of watch it back, Swalich did just kind of run into her. Um,
Yeah,
is she again? It was one of those things shouldn't have been that low, but also Swalich should have probably just not have been in such of a hurry. I think if there would have been a little bit more patience and just a little bit more like just live with the frustration that would have brought, then I think three cars would have been saved. Swalch did keep going, and so did Kane, but they were never the same. But like definitely got the worst of it. So yeah, I don't blame Catherine. Like I feel like she hasn't really. She's kind of just gotten thrown into the wolves in a lot of ways. It's just she didn't really, from what I understand, she didn't even qualify on speed, and so she kind of bought this ride with her sponsorship and everything. So yeah, just I want her to get more experience, but at the same time, it's also like, man, the people that have wrecked just from her spinning or maybe not giving enough room have been front runners. Wallace was actually having a pretty decent day going, and he hasn't had one of those in a while. Like they showed his finishes, and he's been outside the top 20 for the past like 6 weeks. Uh, Casey Kane was so excited to see him come in and to see him doing well was really exciting. And then that was like the first thing I think I came in within like 10 laps this wreck happened and I was like, oh, that just I felt a bit like Darlington, where it's like the first couple laps the driver you're rooting for just wrecks. And you're like,
Yeah, you're
I don't
just
even want to watch
disappointed.
anymore. Um, but before we get too far into uh, more specifics about the Xfinity race. How was it for y'all? I do want to give y'all's team a shout out. Y'all's paint scheme was pretty cool. I
Yeah, we got Harrison's again.
Yeah, Harrison's puts on a pretty cool scheme because I remember when they
Yeah,
were on Barry's Ford car and it looked pretty good.
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, they were on Josh Berry's car for a little while. Yeah, we actually had an overall solid day. That was probably one of the best beginning to end days for us. The car does not look great right now. I'm sure it's
Oh
in
yeah, y'all
pieces
got
at the
banged up a bit
shop.
at the end.
We got banged up a little bit, but no, I mean, for where we started 16th. We fell back a little bit because of the pit strategies and cycles, how some teams short pitted when stages were coming up, and then we just waited till the stage so that we could get stage points, which we did. So that was mission accomplished. But um, we ran around 20th or so most of the day, and then those wrecks at the end, we kind of kept, we were able to dodge those wrecks, stay in it, and then I think that one wreck at the just past the start finish line, we ran into somebody, and we thought for a second we might be in big trouble, that maybe he pushed the nose in too much, and we might have busted the radiator. But luckily that did not happen, and we were able to limp it home. But beginning to finish, we were able to make some adjustments to the car, made them better. I feel like the name of the game for us this year had been like we try to do adjustments for Jeremy, and it just really nothing works. So for us to actually like come down pit road, have great stops, make adjustments, and it actually helped Jeremy, and then he's able to make some passes on the track, and then us allow to make great stops and allow us to make passes on pit road for him too was just something that we hadn't really been able to do, which I'll say this, the pit crew to then road crew and crew chief, we're all learning to work together. So we're about 2 months into the season, so it's starting to come together. We've had to ask for certain things for help for us to make pit stops easier. And I think they're starting to see like, okay, hey, if we can help these guys, they can help us. That
Mhm.
to start the year, it was more or less like kind of survival, like get to the racetrack, figure out what we can do to make the car better. But now we're kind of all starting to really come together and have the chemistry along with what the crew chief is thinking. And that was just it was a fun weekend through and through. We had great pit stops aside from the one that Alvin got. The tire got hit with him holding it. We had great stops where we were able to gain positions for Jeremy on pit road, and that's always such a good feeling for us.
How different are, this might be a little too subjective or generic to really have a good answer for, but how different are the adjustments at a place like Rockingham versus what would be next week's Talladega? Are
Mm.
they kind of the same or are they bigger swings at different areas?
You're gonna definitely take bigger swings at
Is
smaller
it bigger
short
swing? Yeah,
tracks.
bigger swings at smaller short tracks.
Short tracks, you're probably gonna take bigger swings at than Talladega, Daytona, and maybe even Atlanta. The balance is kind of minimal. Like it's a drafting track, so as long as you've got if you can suck up behind the car and be able to push, or you can have someone pushing you and you're not wrecking loose or super tight, overall you can kind of float throughout the race. You can kind of do whatever you got to do. It really comes down to more so driver skill and spotter for the restrictor plate races or pack racing because it's no longer a restrictor plate. But it comes down to your spotter and your driver for those races, and then a lot of it's fuel mileage. Like we're not really worried about tire wear and stuff when it comes to Talladega. With same thing for Rockingham, we weren't sure what the tire was going to do. It kind of ended up being more of a hard compound, so we didn't factor tires as much as we thought we may. But the adjustments you're going to make for a short track typically tend to be bigger than something you'd make at Talladega. However, I'll say this: usually the first pit stop for Daytona Talladega, you're gonna do one big adjustment, which is just like to drop the ride height a little bit to get the spoiler to sit lower. But aside from that, you're not gonna be going, every pit stop try to make multiple adjustments all at once. It's usually one time, and that's about it. And then maybe air pressure. But
What's
that's
your favorite adjustment to do? Are you the guy that spins the thing on the back windshield? Is that fun to do?
that always comes down to the tire carrier and the jack man. The changers typically we're only gonna make. If you're a front changer, you're going to make packer adjustments, which is like a little shim that you put in the shock.
Mm.
Sometimes you'll open and close shocks. And
You ever pinch
same thing.
yourself?
Pinch myself? No, I haven't. As a rear
I
changer, you
saw
might.
that once. I saw like they showed a video of like a changer doing what you just said, and I was like, I feel like someone would get pinched doing that.
Mm, no, I mean you can burn your hands if you touch the rotor or burn your arm. That's
I
probably the only
remember
thing you got to
you
do.
you've come home whenever I was living, we lived in the same house. You would come home with like I remember once you came home with like a burn mark on your cheek where the lug nut bounced back and hit
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've had that where they ricochet.
Yeah.
But
Um, cool. Well, to wrap up stage one, Nick Sanchez, like I said, he led for a while and he got himself a stage win out of it. Now there was pit strategy to this, whereas I think the front runners came in. I think it
mhm.
was kind of one of those races where front
I
runners
think it
would
was
pit.
top 10 to top 15. Most of
Yeah,
them decide
people
to
that
come
were
in the
going
pit.
for a win, they could afford to go for the win. Um, in this race, they came down early, letting Nick Sanchez come in for the stage one win, and then y'all finished ninth in the first stage, which I was really fun to see. Um,
I'm
going
pretty
into
sure Jeremy said he was like plowing tight, so he was really just trying to get to the
he's
first pit
just
stop.
surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just so curious about what that feels like. I've always like whenever they try to describe the car, it's one thing to be told, it's another thing. I'm like, what does plowing tight feel like? Because playing NASCAR games, playing Forza, whatever it may be, like I kind of have that idea, but I'm also like, what is it like in real life to just try and manage that, you know? You
The
and with
best way I can
iRacing have a
explain
better,
it,
yeah,
yeah, the best way I could explain plowing tight or wrecking loose is tight means your nose isn't really turning. The front wheels are just wanting to keep going straight, and if
yeah,
it's loose, the rear end wants to step out on you and spin you out. That's
yeah,
probably the easiest way I could explain it to somebody.
yeah. That's what it seems like. For stage two, it was pretty calm for the
I
most
think we
part.
finished P3 in stage two, right?
Yes, stage two, y'all were third. But during stage two, I will say, um, as I did say, it was pretty clean. Carson Quaffle and Jesse Love really raced well. It was really fun to watch them race for first the whole time because it was one of those things where somebody would get first, and then like we were talking about earlier, where it wasn't necessarily like they would just drive away. It was the other one could still, whoever was in second could still manipulate the car in front of them. And so it was this back and forth for a little bit, which was really cool to see until we have about 12 to go on the stage where Creed Rex, um, he got loose under the 19, or the 19 got loose under him and yeah, ruined it. Well, at least
Poor
Creed's day.
Sheldon.
Yeah,
He cannot get a win to save his life.
yeah, three different teams now, right? Right?
RCR to then where was he at
Gibbs.
last year? Was he at Gibbs? Yeah,
Yeah.
and then now he's at Haas Factory. I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna come. He's gonna get a win. He's always been so close,
It's
but
one of those
it's
things.
mind blowing to see how many second place finishes he's had.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like he's good. Like he has good results. He's consistent most of the time. And yeah, just as for a win, that's like if you were to add up all of his second place finishes, I think he
It's like
could buy a win at this point.
he's playing Michael Jordan in any you know NBA Finals game. He's taking an L every time.
Yeah. Well, also it's one of those things where even for Sammy Smith now finishing second, Sheldon Creed's never had that kind of luck where so many DQs in front of him.
Yeah, seriously.
Which honestly, would that be a sucky way to get your first win in
Like a
that? And
consolation
I
prize. Just
guess
like,
with the
here you
context
go.
of Creed having what is it, 13 second place finishes now, and like
It's like 11 or 12 at least that's what I know.
it's either is a record or becoming a record. But I it makes me wonder like if I got my first win after that many second place finishes, would I probably part of me feels like it probably wouldn't. in his head be like, okay, that wasn't my first legit win.
Yeah,
Uh,
you would definitely have that. Like there'd be an asterisk next to it.
I
You'd be
think
like, yeah,
Joey
we.
Logano kind of talks about how his first win was like a rain out.
Hmm.
And he was kind
I
of
think
like,
it
well,
wasn't it like Loudon up in New Hampshire
yeah,
was his
I
first win?
vividly remember that because that was one of the first times I got mad at a rain win. I was like, no, wait, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Uh, but I was too young to really understand racing too. Um, yes, at the end of stage two, Dean Thompson takes it. Y'all come in third. Going into the last stage, William Swallow spins around lap 115. Parker Retzov actually blew a tire
He
around the
coasted
same.
around like for like 2 laps he drove with a flat tire.
But
So
that
he didn't have to
and then
pit
the
and
oh
lose track
07
position.
spun. So around this stage, stage three, like it, that's when the chaos started to come in, which was really. I thought
Yeah.
that was going to be the first stage, but nope. Like Justin, I'm not even gonna Bonsignor or whatever, the 19 car. Don't ask me. I also my lap count may not be accurate. I think I realized at one point I was just looking at the number, not if it was under 100 laps, it was like 90 to go, and I was just like, okay, they're on lap 90, and so I'm not even gonna read my lap count. Because I was just, but yeah, so Parker Redslob running into a couple issues. The oh 07 conveniently spins around that same time. Uh, there's just a lot of kind of just spinning on their own, and then we get towards the end, and people are starting to run out of fuel. I remember listening in the 16, they were like, "Oh, you're short like 10 to 15 laps," and it was like, "So yeah, you're not gonna make that up. You can't like
Well, that sounds like what happened to Corey Heim and who was the other truck? The 15 truck, 17 truck?
maybe."
Friday. They were
Oh
just going
yes,
to
yeah,
drive until they could get a caution and they never got one.
yeah. Well, that was the strategy, but then what was funny with the 16 was they came over there and said, "All right, you're good." And they just told him to go. So that's why with that 10 to go, him and Sam
Everybody just started
Mayer,
running out.
yeah, a couple people just started to run out, which the Mayer, as he dropped like a rock and the 16 dropped, like that just caused those big wrecks
Hmm.
with multiple cars. I mean, Kyle Sieg, he was doing pretty well, but yeah, he was in that same boat of just didn't have the fuel mileage. He eventually runs out. And then he and Ryan Ellis both spun in like laps. Or no, Kyle Sieg is the 28.
Yes,
Ryan Sieg is the
the
39.
39.
Yeah, he led quite a bit for a while, but yeah, like I said, he eventually runs out. He had to race
I
the
saw
two.
the 39 had to come down pit road during one, like under green. I don't know if they had an issue. I don't want to say
I
like
think that's
anything
when
and
they
make.
were running out. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
They came down under green though, and then they got like all those cautions. They got their lap back, and since they had come down under green, they decided just to keep staying out, and they eventually got the lead. So I
Hmm.
wasn't sure what the reason for coming down was
Hmm.
for, but I knew that they were going to be close on fuel if it went green all the way to the end. I was thinking that this could turn out to be the same
Yeah.
outcome as the truck race, where it's just a fuel mileage race.
Yeah. This one was a different kind of fuel mileage race. Everyone kept losing fuel. Um, yeah. So yeah, him and Jesse Love or Ryan Sieg and Jesse Love had to they raced again pretty hard for a couple laps. With about 40 to go though. Actually, sorry, 25 to go. Blaine Perkins spins and brings out a caution. And I think from this wreck on is when that chaos really just settled in because that's when people were starting to get a bit desperate and starting to make the big moves. I mean, Daniel Dye with 16 to go spins, and then I have in here the 16 and 39 run out of fuel. There we go. There's an answer. They run out of fuel with 10 to go. Um, and then that was around the same time where the big wreck happens, taking out like 9 cars. Um, and then with 5 to go, Jesse Love starts to sputter. And then with 3 to go, more cars run out of fuel, causing another big wreck. Um, and y'all were involved in the one before that with about 10 to
We had the,
go.
we were involved in the big one.
Yeah, you're one of the 9 cars in that one. Which that one was unfortunate because you had a good car like Carson Quaffle and Justin Allgaier is always good, but Carson Quaffle being involved in that, he was up front most of the day. He in stage three really fell off. He was
Mm.
always one of the top cars, but something happened stage three. They just maybe didn't make the right adjustments, but they yeah weren't competitive to that
Mm.
point like they were. It really let it go to some of these other guys like. the two was always good, but Sammy Smith came back up for the third stage. But yeah, I mean, with that final restart, I think Parker Retzlaff and like Harrison Burton were the cars that had no worries about fuel. They had pitted, the strategy worked out in their favor. They're brought up to the front, and Sammy Smith and Just A Love were in front of them. And I think Parker mentioned in an interview saying, I was just ready for both of them to run out.
Yeah.
And so,
Why wouldn't you be? You can get a
yeah.
win.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it reminded me of Nashville where it was just like, who's going to run out now? Like, Joey Logano's got to run out at this point. Um, but yeah,
Was that the race last year that Joey went like a crazy amount of laps on
yeah,
fuel? And they
yeah.
kept getting cautions and they're like the
I think,
22 is going to run out. And then he
yeah, it was
never
like
did.
five green, white checkers, and yeah, he just
That's
never ran out.
right. I
Everyone kept,
forgot about that.
oh, I didn't.
Holy
Because,
crap, I forgot about that.
yeah, because that was one of those, I remember it brought up the conversation of like, what's the limit on overtime restarts? Because, yeah, that was a bit much. But it's just one of those gray areas for an argument, but because it never really happens to that extent often.
Nah, I don't know if you should have a limit, man. I think it's cool.
I like it, and that's the thing. It's like it just doesn't happen enough to where it's like, okay, this is getting annoying. But in
Yeah,
that,
leave it
yeah,
alone.
it probably leaves a bitter taste at the end of a race. Like, the finish wasn't like very true to what the race was. Maybe the dominant car or the good cars didn't win, but just due to all the restarts. But it's also like, again, it just doesn't happen enough to start making rules about something. Um, but yeah, Jesse Love ultimately wins, but then gets disqualified, leaving Sammy Smith the winner. Which Sammy Smith did, like I think he had a pretty good response because Jesse Love used him up. I don't know if you saw that, but Jesse Love, going into the corner, finessed, as they would put it, his way around Sammy Smith by pushing him a little deep, and Sammy Smith had to go up the track, and Jesse Love just drove right under him.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was a very good move on Love's part. I mean, it was a bit aggressive, if you want to call it that. To me, it was a classic NASCAR move um, at a good track. It was kind of an old school kind of move. But yeah, Sammy
The old
Smith
bump
was
and
like, it was
run.
cool. A little bit, yeah. Sammy Smith had a great response to it. I was curious about that kind of last restart because Taylor Gray was right there with Sammy Smith. I think they started front row at one point, and I was like, "Are we about to see some revenge?"
I see some sparks.
But no, they stayed respectful. Jesse Love, if anybody had an aggressive move, it was Jesse Love at the end, and he said I had to do it to finish the job, and I was like, "Hey, I don't blame you, especially if you've been the dominant car all day. Like,
Yeah,
could you imagine that feeling of dominating all day and then just coming second just
yeah.
off of a restart? Yeah, that would be frustrating. So,
It's warranted.
yeah. So let's go into some notable finishers. We said Sammy Smith gets first, and all these people would be one spot lower if it wasn't for uh, Jesse
Jesse.
Love's. Yeah. But Parker Red Stuff comes in second, which was great. Honestly, just a great day for Alpha Prime because you also have Brendan Poole in fourth. Um,
Yep.
they've had some
Good job,
solid
guys.
finishes this year, especially Brendan Poole. I think at what was it at Darlington? They had a pretty good finish as well, or at least were running high. Harrison Burton third, pretty good on them. Josh Williams seventh. That's your old driver. Good
Good
to
old
see him get
Josh.
a top 10. Yeah, really cool, especially not at a non-pack racing track too. He's pretty good at
Yeah.
those. Jed Burton eighth, Daniel Dye ninth, and Jeremy Clements 10th. So good day for y'all as well.
Yep.
Yeah, overall, I did like Rockingham. I'm excited to see next year. Um, yeah, excited to go back. Are you excited for like to go back to it? Is it a track you want to go back to?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think no matter what, and this would just be my 2 cents to NASCAR is if you can't for some reason get cup cars there, keep Xfinity and trucks there. I think they put on a great show. It is a great facility for the size of races that they put on. That in my opinion, it was if you can't ever get cup there for some reason, keep it at least for truck and Xfinity. It
Yeah.
was perfect. And you had two I wouldn't say two sellouts, but you had two you had one race that was a sellout, I think Friday. could have been a sellout race if it was race Saturday and Xfinity was Sunday for some reason.
Yeah.
But being Eastern and stuff, I understand the scheduling conflicts. But if you want to do that next year on a weekend that's not Easter and do just Truck Xfinity, and honestly, dude, it's not that bad of a weekend. It's almost like an off weekend anytime you ever get to drive to and from your house, just because you have to be home every night. So if you do that to break up some of the monotonous in the schedule where, you have these long stretches of races where you're always hopping on planes and stuff, do it. But I think nonetheless, keep it for Truck Xfinity. It was a smash hit for Xfinity being a sellout. And the race itself was good, even though there was a lot of torn up race cars.
Yeah. But it wasn't, I think Eric Eastep pointed out a good point. It wasn't a chaos in the way of people were just shoving their way into a spot that wasn't there, kind of running over
Yeah,
it.
it
It
wasn't
was,
overly aggressive and disrespectful racing. It was clean racing.
yeah, it was the result of fuel mileage and gambling. So again, it takes out some pretty good cars, but again, it was kind of more of a racing product than it was a driver product of a wreck.
For sure.
Um, yeah. So yeah, that takes care of Xfinity. I wanted to ask you a couple questions here at the end. This will be kind of a quick opinion, but what is your thoughts on qualifying? I didn't really think too much about it till I heard another opinion because I don't know what the term would be, but right now it's like based off of points and previous race finishes that brings in the qualifying order for the next week. But it used to be a random drawing essentially of the qualifying order, so it didn't matter what you did the week before. Your name gets drawn from a hat. And that's just, and so it's interesting. I believe Kevin Harvick was talking about this because he wants to go back to that because it does. If you have a bad finish and you're not a great team, you just kind of keep getting buried by qualifying like first, and so you don't get the good qualifying, whatever benefits come
Kind of
from
like
later
kind of like
qualifying.
slot, like your slot to go out. You don't have any rubber on the track. Kind of
Yeah, especially like at places like that, really that stuff really matters. And so that was pretty interesting to me because it does, if you have a bad week, it does make it worse the next week in a way. But
it's
at the
kind of like
same
a
time,
compounded
like,
effect.
yeah, but it also does kind of like, I don't know, I don't know how much you'd consider like a good qualifying position for the next week as a benefit, but I mean, it definitely is. I don't know. It was an opinion that I heard, and I was like, I've never really thought about it. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I can kind of see where Kevin's coming. I think that I mean, the teams that are well prepared, that, go to the sim, go to the wind tunnel, they have all the data. They're going to figure stuff out kind of regardless. But I definitely can see where it's frustrating when you have a bad finish. So then you have a bad qualifying slot, like you're very early in qualifying, or you're the first one out, and there's really no rubber on the track. Maybe the track is cooler, maybe the track's hotter, and it can play an advantage to other teams that get to go out later. But I don't know if I have too big of an opinion on that. I want to see everybody succeed, but at the same time, only one person can truly succeed by achieving pole position or winning the race. So,
Yeah. I think when I think about it, I lean more towards the random because, like you said, if the good teams are always going to rise to the top. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is interesting. I don't really care. It's not really one change I want to see quickly. I don't know how much of an effect it really has, but I'd be interested to see that change.
for sure.
I have two more questions. What makes or breaks a great pit stop?
Pitability, man. Good old pitability. So something that not a lot of people that like a general fan, someone that's watching, at home, they don't understand pitability. So a lot of the stuff that makes a great pit stop comes from how well the car is set up for pit stops. You can talk about chain link in the rear for the rear suspension, and then you can also talk about thread links for studs on when you're hitting lug nuts, brand new studs, brand new lug nuts, and then also how what are the lug nuts torqued to for like first pit stop. So that's some of the stuff I was kind of hinting at earlier that with Jeremy's deal and our crew chief and all these guys that we've been trying to tell them some things that can help us. But pitability is huge. Like for example, my truck for the most part is usually new equipment, new studs, new lug nuts, and I'll be honest, when I hit lug nuts on truck day, it's like smooth as butter. It's almost not even comparable to then when you have bad lug nuts and bad studs, say on an Xfinity car or just a different team. So when things are set up for pit stops, and this was like I was talking with a buddy of mine. I think it was my teammate Jacob Ray on Saturday. The cars that run up front, like your Gibbs cars, your RCR, and your Haas factory cars, all the cars that run up front, those are the easiest cars to pit. They have brand new equipment. You have all the pit support behind the wall to help you. Like someone's pulling hose, someone's handing in tires, someone's
I pull
catching
hose.
tires. Like you'd like to pull a hose?
Yeah. That's what we used to do with dad a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much stuff that goes into making great pit stops, and it goes beyond the five guys that jump off the wall. It goes to like I said, the setup
Oh, like the
in the
burgers?
car. What?
You said five guys jump off the wall.
Oh,
It's
Five
just a bunch
Guys, the
of
restaurant.
cooks.
Yeah. It goes into more than the guys that jump off the wall. It goes into the behind the wall support. And like I said, how well it's set up. That's something that, if you ever see guys are having struggles on pit road, it might not be that it's the actual crew. It might be something to do with the car,
Mhm.
suspension when tires come out and the fenders and how they set up trucks or cars for aero purposes. That's a huge effect. Like more times than not, my truck will have more aero issues than my Xfinity car. So my right front sometimes won't come out as easily. Just it's not me having struggles hitting lug nuts. It's just the tire will not come out because it's hitting fenders.
Hmm.
So all
How
that being
much does a
said,
tire weigh on those?
depends on the track. If there's an inner liner, it's 75 pounds. If there's a non-liner, your short tracks are typically the ones that have non-liners. It's 55 pounds. But
Oh,
everybody's
wow.
like super shocked when they think of 55 to 75 pounds. To me, it's all about leverage. You're doing so much with leverage that you're not just pulling 75 pounds of dead weight or 55 pounds of dead weight. It's a lot of it's leverage. You're pulling
Mm.
something off of a car that it's going to immediately fall down to the ground and kind of, work with you.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. And I thought for some reason 65 pounds stuck in my head. Um, What's a normal week for a pit crew guy? Particularly balancing normal life versus the weekend race life, because I know you particularly you pit for two teams on the weekend, but during the week you have a full-time job.
Hmm.
But there are the guys who are you find out like a Hendrix or a Gibbs where they also work in the shop, but also pit on the weekend. So maybe that it's probably a bit easier to balance because the shop wants you to go pit their car and they understand the schedule. Whereas for you, you're probably having to balance this full-time job and tell them you got to go out of the state this weekend too. So what's that like?
Yeah, so for my weekly job, I actually requested when I got hired on to the company I work for, I could work 410s, and they let me work 410. So I only work Monday through Thursday, which is nice, and I never have to worry about having to take Fridays off. And for the rest of the guys, I don't want to speak for too many people. Some guys do have full-time jobs that they work Monday through Friday that they either take PTO off for those Friday races. Sometimes they just take unpaid leave, but it
Mm,
all depends on where they work at. And then there's the some guys that do work in the shop. Now where it gets tricky is some teams will hire in new pit crew guys and they'll give them a shop position along with like shop pay, and it helps them get acclimated to like seeing the car, seeing the parts, or seeing other parts of the race shop and how things are put together. So if something ever happens at the racetrack, they're like, "Oh, I've seen this. I understand like how to work on it." Some of them they only want pit pay. Like they might be a veteran in the sport and they're like, I just want to run pit stops, just show up to practice, go home. And they might have like other businesses that they run or they've, invested into that they through making their race pay, they have opened up other businesses and that's what they focus on. But it really all depends on, the lifestyle that you want. Some guys they want the minimal, like I just run pit stops and then I go home and hang out and do nothing else. Some guys are, advantageous and they always are looking for new ventures to dive into. And
mhm.
I have my rear changer on my Xfinity car. His name is Jacob Ray. He runs the carbon fiber shop for Penske. So he flew to Germany this week for something with one of
Was he
the
at
Porsche
Nuremberg?
deal.
Oh, Portugal.
I'm
I
not sure
saw
where he's
Ford
at, but he
Performance was back at Nuremberg, but I honestly don't even know if that was a
no, I'm
like
not sure. He just told
recent
me that he
thing.
was having to fly to Germany for Porsche because of the carbon fiber stuff that is with this new car that Porsche is dealing with. So
Well, that's casual.
yeah, no big deal. He's flying to Germany like yesterday, and he flies back I think Friday, and then he flies back in Friday night or Saturday morning, and immediately lands in Atlanta to then drive over to Talladega. Crazy schedule, but it's all about how much you want to do and how much the team will let you. Because sometimes teams say like, "Hey, you can't pit certain things, or you're not allowed to do it." It's one or the other. It's really
Hmm.
about the team that you work for, and sometimes it's also relationship based. Like if you've been in the sport for a long time and you've got a good reputation about you, the teams will be more lenient on what you can do.
Yeah. Now, you said the guys that get hired into the shop to kind of acclimate to the environment and atmosphere of racing are those guys that are maybe recruited from like other sports. Like there's a lot of tire changers who were ex-NFL athletes or something like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do they
yeah,
give
no
them a
doubt.
job in the shop? Like you said,
Yeah,
like
it all
to
depends.
me, it just seems
So,
like it's not a, they like give them like a fake job. They're just over there in the corner, just banging a hammer on wood. And they're just like,
yeah, no,
this is
it's not
part of the
that
roll
stupid.
cage.
Yeah.
They
It's
have
usually
like
something that has a
a
purpose.
template, like a old child's toy where you put the triangle in the triangle slot. He's like, I
No,
do a good job.
it's not that dumbed down, but it's definitely simple things like some of the
Pulling
guys working the
hose.
pit, some of the guys working the pit department, seeing stuff, seeing the suspension. A lot of these teams will have a practice car. They set up the car to race trim, so whatever the ride heights and stuff would be at the racetrack, they have the pit crew guys and or guys that work in the pit department set it up, so that
Yeah,
it's race like. But that's what some of those guys get those jobs, and then some of them are just, hey, just work on pit stops. That's what some teams do.
nice. All right, well, I'll do it for episode 16. What is it? Three? Um, all right, coming up, Talladega. Oh yeah, real quick. Talladega is coming up next week. Any predictions? I don't think we did this for this past week, but I like doing the predictions. So
You did a prediction. You picked Ben Rose, and I laughed when I saw him smoking in turn one.
okay, so we did do predictions because
Yeah,
I remember like when he went off, I was like, did I pick him for this race?
yeah. I laughed because I saw the white smoke, and I'm like, I think Ben's blowing up, and Owen's pick
Big
is also going
idiot.
up.
Good thing I didn't put money on it this week. Um, yeah, so coming up, is it all three series are at Talladega, right?
No, it's just Xfinity and Cup,
Oh,
no truck.
Xfinity. Okay. Um, so for Xfinity, I'm gonna go Sheldon Creed. I want to see that break, and I think he'll get it done at Talladega.
Sheldon Creed. Okay, I gotta stick with the 51. That's what I'm pitting out. We've won a restrictor plate race. We've won at Daytona.
Yeah, that's
Jeremy
right.
has won at Daytona, so
Yeah.
he's always pretty good at these races too. Like
Hmm.
he does have a knack for pack racing. So I'm excited to see how well we can do. And honestly, these are the easiest races to pick because it's very minimal work on pit crew. We might run a right side stop, maybe a left side stop, and that's it. Like we usually
Hmm.
don't. Maybe we do one four tire stop. It's very the tire wear for Daytona and Talladega is very simple. It's not hard.
Yeah. For the Cup prediction, I'm gonna go Brad Keselowski. I know he hasn't been doing good at all, but these tracks he's usually just he has the IQ for it, and that's we were talking about earlier, where it's a lot of Talladega and Daytona is the driver IQ. And to
For
me,
sure.
I think Brad's got the IQ for it.
I'm gonna go Chase Elliott. Maybe he'll
Ooh,
break into victory lane. He's always been good, and he has
Lindsay
won at
would
Talladega.
Lindsay
I think a
agrees with
couple of
you.
years ago.
Yeah, yeah, he was one of the
I can't
yeah.
remember if it was next gen or not, but I do
It
remember
was
he won at
next gen. I
Talladega.
think 2022 and he won like five races. Talladega was one of them.
There you
Um,
go. I'm gonna go Chase Elliott.
all right, cool. So we'll see how that turns out next week.
Yeah,
Uh, all right, well that does it for this episode. Catch y'all
yeah.
next
Episode
week.
3 is in the books, man.
Yeah,
Had fun. Thanks, Owen.
thank you.